Many commenters to this channel have referenced the work of Thomas Sowell, an American economist, as proof against the effectiveness of minimum wage policies on workers' lives. Thomas Sowell is the former Marxist turned favorite economist of the wealthy American business class. For example, Sowell claims that black unemployment was lower in the 1890s before minimum wages came along and ruined things for workers, and in particular black workers. Unfortunately, his only logical underpinnings for much of these beliefs are anecdotal. In his interviews, you can hear his own self-loathing reflections about how poor an employee was when he was young. First, listen to Sowell talk about his early Marxism.
Tom Sowell, welcome.
Thank you.
You grew up in Harlem, dropped out of high school to join the Marine Corps during the Korean War, received an undergraduate degree from Harvard, a master's from Columbia, and your doctorate from the University of Chicago. All of which pales by comparison with the fact that you once tried out for the Brooklyn Dodgers. But during this period, from Harlem to the University of Chicago, throughout your 20s, you've said, you spent most of the decade of your 20s as a Marxist.
Yes. You'd have all these wonderful luxury apartment buildings and so on. And finally, around 129th or 30th Street, it would go on a long viaduct. And then it would do a right turn back into the occupied area, and there you'd see the tenements. And I would wonder, why is this? I mean, why this huge disparity? And there was nobody else, there was no other explanation around.
Thomas Sowell's now outspoken repudiation of racial and class divisions in America has made him a darling of wealthy elites and right-wing politicians. Here is Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas accepting the National Humanities Medal, presented by President George W. Bush on behalf of Thomas Sowell.
In intellectuals in society, quote, black unemployment rates were lower than those of whites as long ago as 1890, close quote.
And in 1930 as well.
And in 1930. First of all, black unemployment was lower decades ago, before the Civil Rights Movement, before the New York Times began editorializing on on black poverty. How can that have been?
It shows, among other, well, the minimum wage law is one huge factor. 1930 was also the last year when there was no federal minimum wage law.
What was happening in America before the minimum wage in, for example, 1890? During that time, Jim Crow laws were implemented in the United States of America. Each southern state passed laws formally segregating public facilities. It was then that the famous white and colored signs appeared. And at that time, lynching began to accelerate. This is a significant undercount, but from 1882 to 1968, nearly 5,000 lynchings of black Americans occurred in the U.S. The average hourly wage for laborers in the United States was less than 14 cents an hour. White men earned $2,678 a year, while non-white men earned $1,715 a year. White women earned $1,710, while non-white women earned $928. Employers, back then, could just pay workers whatever they wanted, and the hourly wage a worker got was nearly always on the basis of your skin color and gender. Do you agree with Sowell that the 1890s was an example of the good old days? I certainly don't. I find Sowell's perspectives on the minimum wage deeply offensive. I also understand that Sowell's target audience is not the working class. It is to the wealthy business owners and rich elites. Sowell is catering to them specifically. In my experience, there are always scholars who kowtow to wealthy interests because the wages and perks are significantly better. These beliefs and vocal assertions have made Thomas Sowell a darling of the Republican political class. Workers today are more productive than ever. If the minimum wage had kept pace with worker productivity, it would be nearly $23 an hour. An examination of 138 state-level minimum wage legislative initiatives found that the number of low-wage jobs did not decrease. A higher minimum wage can actually lower the costs for small business owners by reducing employee turnover, missed workdays, and overall better customer service. These perspectives are supported by careful empirical study and data, not emotions, not anecdotes, not feelings, and certainly not a deliberate and offensive misreading of American history.